All right, guys, let's get this thing fired up and have another live at 9:45. So on this week, I have, oh my gosh, my mind just went blank. I have Eddie Goodridge from Team Brood Racing, and so Eddie and I spent some time last night talking, and I think this is going to be an amazing episode at live at 9:45. I'm thankful to have all you guys tuning in and see what's going on. I'll get this all fired up here in just a second, but I want to give you a little heads up. This week on Live at 9:45, we have something different than ever before. So, like 2 days ago, 3 days ago, I got a message sent to me by Eddie, and he said, "Hey man, I think I want to do a giveaway." So today we're doing the first ever live giveaway on Live at 9:45 and going from there. Okay? So thumbs up if you want to win some cool stuff because Eddie's awesome and decided to go from there. All right, I'm not going to tell you how we're doing that yet. So tune in, watch, catch up with what's going on, and we'll go and we'll figure it out. So I'm going to bring Eddie into the video. We'll get this thing fired up and get some questions rolling. Give me just a second. Whoops. Approve. On in. Let me snag my questions over here. Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Whoa, you're loud.
Okay, let's turn it down a little bit here.
No, you're good. It just was.
Oh, okay, we're good.
I had my
Okay.
speaker turned up to a point. I was like, wow, that's going to come across bad in the mic. But no, so how's it going tonight?
Pretty good. Getting ready to go see Deadpool 2. A couple hours here. But I asked you how long it was going to be because I was like, yeah, I don't want to miss that late night showing for Deadpool. So
Right, man. I hear you. So awesome. I'm glad to have you on tonight, man. I thoroughly enjoyed our talk last night, so I can't imagine if tonight goes as good as it did last night in our test. Like, people are gonna have a great show. So, first off, I'd like to shout out to all you guys who are watching out there, and just tell us where you're watching from. That's one of my favorites. I like reading back through the comments and seeing where everybody's at because we have had people all over the world, and it never ceases to amaze me. So, Eddie, you are on the other side of the country from me, correct?
yeah, I live out in Washington, so we just tell everybody we live in Seattle. It's kind of the it doesn't really matter where you live in the state. You just tell people I live in Seattle because no one has any clue where anything is in Washington other than Seattle. And if you just say Washington, they assume Washington, D.C. So, but yes, I do live in Arlington, Washington. It's about 45 minutes directly north of Seattle.
Nice. We tell everybody we live in Pittsburgh, which is 4 hours away. So I totally know what you're saying.
Would make sense. So, yeah, but at least people know where Pennsylvania is to a degree. So.
That's fair. I'll give you that.
Darn steal.
So let's start this thing off with telling us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've lived in Washington all my life, born and raised here. I met my wife late 90s, got married, been married for over 20 years now. 4 boys. None of them play with RC cars. Kind of weird, right?
That is interesting.
Not their thing. It's always just been their thing. Only one of them plays sports. Same thing. I was a big sports kid when if I wasn't playing baseball, I was playing with RC cars. It was just always one of those two things. Didn't really have time to do drugs or do dumb stuff or get in, anything major trouble just because I was always doing one of the two.
Right.
But only one of my 4 boys plays sports, and he plays hockey of all things instead of baseball. He played baseball 1 year, but didn't really like it. So,
yeah.
But lived here, like I said, all my life, and then just been doing brood for the last about 10 plus years now. About 9 of it full-time brood stuff. So before that, I worked at my Indian tribe. I know I don't look very Indian, but I'm American. And did that for a long time, and then just started doing brood and just been doing brood ever since. So pretty much, I guess, the basis of me. I'm in my early 40s. I don't want to give away my exact age. I'm sure some of my team guys know how old I am. Yeah, other than that, I mean, I'm a big hobbyholic. Been doing, besides RC cars and other hobbies and stuff, my whole life. Just kind of the thing I like doing, but RC cars has always been the thing that's stuck. I mean, It's always been the thing that even when I take a break, no one ever retires from RC cars. You just take breaks. So you just take a break and then you come back. So,
Fair
but yeah, I mean, that's the long and short about me, I think.
All right. Well, how long have you been in the hobby? You said you've been in the hobby forever, but
So I got my
started?
first RC car in 1987 for Christmas. So I was like, I think that was sixth grade. Um, my dad bought me a Tamiya Hornet. He bought my brother a Tamiya Grasshopper. Um, they were already put together. My dad was really good friends with the local hobby shop owner. My dad's really big into to standard plastic models and whatnot,
Yep.
and he was really good friends with the guy. So the guy put the cars together for both of us, and I thought it was really cool. Had a lot of fun. Broke the crap out of the thing all the time. I don't know if you ever played with an original Hornet, but you know the chassis is all one piece of plastic, basically, including the shock towers, and they famously would break on the shock towers there. So, um, you know, it's like I had a ton of fun with it, but then I broke it multiple times, including snapping the chassis. And my parents kind of were just like, if you're gonna, you know, fix this thing, you're gonna pay for it yourself because these, you know, $15 to throw chassis are, you know, that was $15 in the late '80s, so that was a lot more money than it is now.
Yeah.
And so it kind of sat for a little bit, and then I know this sounds weird. Don't repeat this to anybody. It's top secret. I was homesick from school one day, and I was watching Punky Brewster, which if you guys are not old enough and not know what Punky Brewster was, it was a show about a little girl who stayed with this really old guy, and she somehow got an RC car and raced it, and I was like, wow, that's like I didn't know you could race these things. That's cool. And this is only like 6 months later or something. So I looked it up. We had a local track, started going to a local track, and it's been downhill ever since then. I mean, I worked at a hobby shop when I was a teenager. You know, like I said, I took breaks here and there and just kept getting back into it. And then started Brood, and yeah, I've pretty much been going ever since then. So
Awesome, man. So we talked about who got you in. We talked about what your first RC car in the hobby was. If you weren't in RC in at all, what would be your hobby of choice that you think you'd latch onto?
Well, like I said, I'm a hobbyholic. I've done a lot of stuff. Played paintball, played airsoft. I'm a big sports guy. Used to play extremely competitive softball, including going to Worlds a few years in a row. But probably Magic, the card game. I've played it since I was in high school, and wish I wouldn't have sold all my cards over the last like 8 years because I had a pretty extensive collection. But I'd probably play Magic more. I mean, that's probably what I would do. It's fun. It's, you know, the game's interesting. I do find it ironic that, you know, my employees used to tease the crap out of me about playing Magic and whatnot. And one time I got some stuff sent to me from Japan as a favor from one of my dealers over there.
Yeah.
And it got shipped to the shop when I used to have the shop at a separate location. And they drew all types of inappropriate things all over the box and stuff. And they used to hack into my computer if I left it open, and they would change my avatars to be like wizards and stuff. And what's the ironic part about that now is one of my former employees used to tease the crap out of me about that. He actually plays Magic now. He messaged me about 6 months ago. I was like, hey, I'm starting to play Magic. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm totally screenshotting this and like ever. And he actually came over a few weeks ago and was getting some cards from me. And I was like sneaking photos of him just because it was fun. So I would say Magic. I would probably play Magic. If you've never played it, it's an awesome game. It's fun. But if you think RC is expensive, wait till you see Magic. Some of the cards are,
you know, I've been around it. I've seen it. I've seen people play it around me. I just, at that point in my life, I wasn't ready to take the leap into all of the knowledge that is Magic. I think you have to have a pretty wide, extensive knowledge of what's going on to play that game very effectively.
Kind of. I mean, you know, it depends on what format, but I mean, it's one of those games. It's like easy to learn, but it's tough to master. So,
yeah, gotcha.
Like I said, I've been playing since, you know, '94. So I mean, it's second nature to me. So, but
yeah.
It's a fun game. So that would probably be my answer. I'd probably be at some little game shop with a bunch of dudes that have never taken a shower in like the last 3 weeks or so. But yeah. So
all right. So my next question is, big tires or small tires? And I'm curious as to how you're going to answer this, because I know that you're more of a
well,
comp crawling
actually,
guy.
you know, you sent me these questions in advance, so I was able to take some notes. I don't care. I think the whole argument is dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, they're tires, for criminy sakes, and I just don't understand why. I mean, I've seen the arguments online, and I'm just like, you guys don't have something better to argue about, like Trump or something. But no, we're gonna sit here and scream about tires. So I don't really have a preference. I don't care. I've driven both types of, you know, trucks with them,
yeah,
including really teeny ones that obviously look more realistic than the 2.2s, but the 2.2s are easier to drive, I think. I mean, you get over stuff that you normally wouldn't get over. But I mean, I've seen full-blown arguments like in person. When I was at Scale Nats, there was two guys forgive me, the guy that makes the winches, Power Shift Technologies. They had kind of left their booth for a minute, and like two groups of guys got in a huge argument over big tires and small tires. And I'm just like, yeah, that's a good answer, Roy, there. I prefer round ones. So they're round, that's good. So
yeah,
either or works for me. I don't care.
Fair enough, man. I kind of thought that it might go there with the comp crawling background and not so much the scale thing, because I think it's more about.
Well, they argue about it in the comp crawling background too. The taller, or wider, fat, and everything. It's same argument, different
realm. Yep.
I mean, they'll go off on tangents about that all day.
Right. So I'm really curious as to this next one, with you being the motor guru guy, the brushed or brushless. What's your preference?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm going to say brushed, just because that's what I've always been brought up on and done. And you know, brushless has its place. Don't take me wrong. It's a cool technology. Some of the people that are involved in the crawling arena were obviously in the racing arena when brushless got brought in, and you know, they'll tell you the same thing I did. Everybody got filled with a lot of just incorrect facts. They were all the same. You weren't going to be able to cheat with them. You just put them in there. They last forever. They never burn up. I mean, it was just big old long list of just total BS for all intents and purposes. I mean, there was no, you know, Trinity put out a response ad trying to, unfortunately everybody got more mad about the ad than they actually, read it. And when it was all said and done, Trinity was pretty much right. I mean, I think they had one thing wrong. And there was one thing that ended up not applying because they were talking about nickel metal batteries at the time, and LiPo kind of came on at almost the same time. Right. So we never really got to see brushed motors with LiPo, and we never really saw a lot of brushless with nickel metals. I mean, we saw some of it, but not a ton, and LiPo jumped over. Yes, Glenn, I can see the comments pretty decent. Novak was the primary source of all the just absolute urban myths about brushless. And so what that's caused though is that there's not a lot I or any other motor guy can do with the brushless motors. I mean, you can't, there's no brushes and springs to tune. There is tricks you can do, there's certain things you can mess with, but no one wants to pay for that. I mean, just no one wants to do that. So it's like, and Holmes is experiencing the same difficulty now is that, the Castles come out with their slate motors and they're like $100, and I mean, they're cheap. I think they're cheaper than $100. I think they're like $75 or something.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. There just happened to be one when I needed one at the comp I was at. And I think it was like $65 when I picked it up.
Yeah, exactly. And, so it's like you get, it's like, Are my brushless motors better than a bunch of the ones out there? They are. The Holmes ones are better than a bunch of the ones out there? Yeah, they are. Why? Because they actually have certain characteristics that are built specifically for crawling. The problem is that people just don't want to pay extra when they see a brushless motor from Hobby King over here for $45, right. And it's tough, and no one wants to pay for custom anything. And we experience this over in the racing thing, and that's why I just don't do much racing stuff anymore, is because I can go buy the hot Trinity OEM motor and put my sticker on it and do the few tricks I can do to it, but no one wants to pay for that. No one wants to pay for my time to tear through those motors. So I mean, yeah, I can spec them out with my meters and all that fancy stuff, and I can do the little tricks to them and everything, but it just doesn't do it for me. I don't have any fun doing it, and I don't enjoy it. And on top of that, no one wants to pay for it. So I
Yeah.
do what I can to the brushless motors, and then I sell them. And then when I want to actually do something cool and make something cool and enjoy what I'm doing, brush motors for me. So I think they work better too. I mean, the low end control is still superior. Um, uh, you know, in any way, I've yet to touch a brushless motor by any manufacturer, including myself, that can control anywhere near what a brush motor can in the low end stuff. I mean, and there's some people that'll maintain, yeah, my brushless motor is fabulous on the low end, and I'll just kind of say, okay, sure. Yeah, it's probably just haven't driven a correctly set up brushed motor. And sometimes that has to do with people just buying the motor and, throwing it in their truck and not messing with any of their settings. And
Right.
some, sometimes you got to switch those things. Sometimes you got to mess with your throttle curves and whatnot to get that feel, because not all brush motors are the same. Even if you get down to where it's the same model and the same type of arm and stuff. I mean, back in the racing days, we'd see some motors that literally was the exact same motor, exact same everything, and you had a gear guy A's motor 6 teeth higher than you did the other guy's motor, just because it had a completely different power band because of certain manufacturing tolerances and whatnot. So, it's sometimes it's tough to convince customers to that. So that I just don't even argue with them. I'm like, well, the brushless motors are right over there, and all you got to do is grab one of those and go about your bad self, and don't get mad at me when it blows up and I can't fix it. So because there's not much I can do when you blow up a brushless motor. I mean, typically if you blow up the rotor, it takes out other stuff with it, and they're very rarely salvageable. They're pretty much just done. So, yeah.
Fair enough. So I know that you're you are definitely way more knowledgeable in the world of brushed motors than I am. And so one of the things that I lacked when I sent you the questions was honestly tech questions, because I was thinking a little bit about what should I ask, what should we talk about in the way of the whole brushed or brushless and the tech stuff. And so I kind of settled on can you give a rundown for people who are watching this who aren't quite as versed about what's the difference in the different styles of brushes? And then we'll talk a little bit about armatures, just a little bit, nothing crazy, but the new people that don't have any idea. They're like, hey, brush
So
motor,
like brush
brushless.
compounds, or are you talking or just how the brushes function, or what are I guess understand.
We could go brushed compounds. I see a lot of stand up versus lay down stuff. I honestly can tell you that, as ridiculous as it may sound, I genuinely don't know what the difference is. I've been all about build something cool and stick something in there.
So basically, stand-ups were the original brush that we had, way back into the 70s. I mean, the brushes were taller than they were wide. And somewhere mid 80s, someone came up with the idea of putting the brush on the side. And what that ended up doing was increasing the overlap. And that overlap would produce more power. So typically lay down brushes, more RPM. So like back in the racing days, in the spec classes, we ran laydowns on everything, like any form of stock or 19 turn spec classes. We like, if you wanted to go slow, you could run a stand up, but very few motors even came with stand ups. Pretty much everything was laydowns. The modifieds, on the other hand, pretty much stand ups. And then as we progressed way into the future, some of the companies came out with their round brushes and angled brushes and all that type of weird stuff.
Right.
And you kind of had to do that because that overlap was bad on a mod motor. You didn't need it. If you needed to go faster with a mod motor, you just dropped a whine or turned the timing up. stuff you couldn't do with a spec motor. So that's what the laydowns were for. Now, when we've jumped over to the crawling thing, both brushes have their place. The wear difference is very minimal. The motors just don't spin very fast to make that like a huge deal. I like the laydowns better. I think that little extra boost in power that you get is better. I think that they have better brake. There's been arguments about which one actually has more surface contact area. I'll maintain a laydown does. I know some people think a stand-up does, but I've inputted it into CAD, and CAD says that there's more contact area on a laydown than there is a stand-up. So I think they help with brakes better. The amount of brush compounds available for laydowns is tenfold. I mean, we used to make all types of compounds available. I still have a bunch of that stuff from the racing days. A bunch of these bins up behind me here just full of total different compounds, and I've got boxes and boxes over there. Only problem is when those are gone, they're gone. So we'll start dropping down to certain compounds that we can still get versus what's available. But I have a bunch of those compounds in stand-up too. So it just depends on the motor. So sometimes when I'm building stuff, I'll put a stand-up on it. Sometimes I'll do a lay down. And then if I'm getting really tricky, sometimes I'll pull out some of the other weird styles of brushes we have, like P94s or the checkpoint styles, or even the Orion style brushes and stuff like that, if I can find an end bell or use an end bell that uses those brushes. So from a performance standpoint on compounds, you know, it's not a huge deal in crawling. These things just aren't spinning very fast. We don't have lap times to sit there and compare. So like in the racing days, I could chuck, you know, a different set of brushes on a motor, and I could hand it to one of my drivers, then go out there and we could run laps, and we could say, you know, geez, you're 0.2 off now with this new compound, or you're 0.2 faster. And we could measure that. And you can't do that in crawling. You can't do it, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. I mean, there's no one runs the same line on anything, basically. You know, you know, they're all over the place, you know. So you know, so I do offer different compounds if you want to tailor your motor like that. But I tell every customer it's not a huge difference. So don't sit there and freak out thinking like, gosh, if I can't pay the extra $3 to get the team brush compound, my motor's going to suck. Your motor's not going to suck. I mean, if you've got that money in your budget available and you want to do something a little bit different, then by all means go about your bad stuff. Hold on, there's a question. Does the compound of the brush affect the torque of the motor? So yes, it can. The brush compound can affect everything. It can affect RPM, power, torque. It can even affect brake wear characteristics. It not only on the brush itself, but on the commutator. You know, there's tons of stuff. Some brushes don't react well with water. Some brushes absolutely don't care if they're in water. There's so many variables when it comes into brushes, spring tension, and stuff like that. I mean, I could probably spend a whole video talking about the differences. And like I said, I offer them on the site, but don't think that like, oh my gosh, you know, if I can't figure out this, you know. And I had a customer the other day, you know, he bought a pair of motors for his Berg or something like that, put red springs on it. I don't have a way to turn the red springs off, but I would never put red springs on any form of a comp crawler for an MOA truck. They're just not stiff enough. You're going to get tons of roll. You're going to get lots of brush bounce. And yeah, so I emailed him and said, hey, you know, these brushes or springs that you've picked are not the spring you should use on your motor. Let me upgrade them for you. And I didn't charge them, and just upgraded the motor or springs to the ones that would work correctly. So, you know, and part of me sometimes thought maybe I should scale back my, you know, offering so people don't get so confused. But the problem is every time I do that, I get more people that complain about it than I get that people that get confused. So just email me and ask. It takes all of like 10 seconds, you know, like, hey, you know, ask, or go on to the, you know, the Facebook and send me a message and say like, hey, you know, I'm confused. So,
And so that's one of the coolest things. I'm glad that you said just shoot me a message and ask me, because that's kind of what the whole purpose behind why you're being interviewed, why everybody's being interviewed, and why I created the show is that we're all just like, basically we're just huge nerds that love the RC hobby, and we're all involved and we want to support.
Now, you scalar guys are the biggest nerds of the RC hobby by far. You like win. You guys win the nerd competition. Like, not even close. Not even close, man.
Yeah.
So it's cool though. I mean, you guys make cool stuff, but definitely the nerd, you guys win. Like, I always used to think the plane guys were the nerdiest, but nope. You guys make scale, like 4x4 magazines to stick next to scale 6-pack of beer in a cooler.
Yep.
Yeah, that's. Now you're a nerd. Yeah, they're all nerds. So I'm a nerd too. There's nothing wrong with being nerds. Nerds are cool now, so that's just the way it works. So
once you're out of high school, it's cool to be a nerd.
Now they're cool. Yeah.
So
my computer turned off.
All right, so
yes, I'm reading your comments. I saw that someone asked for the thing there. I got my computer up, but for some reason it decided to turn off. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess if that answers the question on brushes and springs, don't overthink it. That's the long and short of it. You're
right.
Some people get way too technical into it, and it's it's like I've thought about doing full-blown videos explaining it, and it's like probably just going to confuse more people than they'll figure it out.
So I was doing it right all along, like put the motor in the truck and drive the truck, right? Like
yes, as long as you don't do water breaking. So
gotcha.
Put it. I'd rather you just put it in the truck and run it than do it in water. So
fair enough.
That is worst thing ever for motors. So one of the few things in this world that me and Holmes agree on. So we both hate it. We both like slam on it whenever we see it. It's an old slot car trick from like the late 70s and early 80s. It was used on some motors, but the problem is they always change the dang things. So what the brush compound was yesterday is something different now. And, so what worked for your water break-in 6 months ago might not work with the new version of the compound. And like I said, some brushes don't like water at all. And so I had a local do it, stuck brand new $95 motor, bunch of options, got it. All Brood motors come broken in, so I don't know what the heck he was doing anyways. And water broke it in for 5 minutes and sent it back in, and I kid you none, the shunt, that's the wire on the brush, was sticking out the face and rubbing on the comm. And when I asked him why he broke it in water, he said, well, it was a $95 motor and I wanted to make sure it was working right. And I was like, that's what you pay me for. That's what I'm doing. So no motor leaves the shop without being broken in. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be a $20, Frenzy mini motor, or, a $250 stubby. They're all broken in. They never leave my shop without getting broken in. And that's how I save a lot of time. I just throw them on the thing. They break in. I monitor the stuff. And once, they're in the box, I know that the motor I sent you is working. So when you don't break them in, manufacturing tolerances can creep up on you, and that sucks. So, yeah.
I hear you. So we've talked a lot about Team Brood, and everybody should know from the titles and from the advertising to get people in to watch what's going on that you are from Team Brood and you're the guy behind it. But where did the name come from, man?
Funny story. So when we were trying to come up with a name to start the RC company, when I decided, okay, I'm going to start a motor company, we started looking. And obviously the first thing when you're starting these businesses is in the early 2000s, you got to be able to get your domain name. You got to be able to get whatever .com you need.
Yeah.
And me and my cousin, who was just kind of a really good friend of mine, we were just sitting there and brainstorming names, and everything was taken. So like if I Googled, random name, if it didn't show up as an RC already being used somehow, the domain was gone. Like someone had already bought the domain, and it just getting so irritating that it was just unreal. And so my wife walks in and she was cooking dinner or something, I don't remember. And she's like, well, why don't you just use your old racing game name? And I said, that's a great idea. So I used to play this game called Motor City Online, and basically it was supposed to be a Need for Speed game, but they ended up taking the Need for Speed name off of it because as it went through development, I think they were a little embarrassed about it because it didn't quite turn out how they wanted it to. So it was called Motor City Online. It was an online racing game. It was absolutely fun. They had like a club thing for the race groups, and I ended up in one club when it first started, and they ended up kind of disbanding or whatever. So I was one of the faster racers at the time in some of the tracks out there. So I was kind of recruited by multiple people to play on, in their club, and, because they had like a club competition every week and you won a bunch of stuff. So I ended up joining a club called Team Brood, and a guy named Dave ran it. I had started a price guide. They had like rare parts and rare cars and all this stuff. And I started like a kind of a price guide of what stuff was worth because of how rare certain parts and cars were. And first it was hosted on one of the team guys' websites, and then we ended up moving it to the actual Team Brood website when we got the domain name. And in the end, it was like the most popular website in the game. I got to go down. The developers of the game were just in Bellevue, which is right by Seattle. Mm-hmm. I got to go down. I got to meet them all. They did a big interview with me. And so I was a very popular player in the game. And they had, we used to do big races and stuff. And they used to give me all these cool prizes to give away that they never gave anybody else. And so I still had the website. Couldn't find one, and then here my blonde wife walks in, and she's like, you already have the domain. Why don't you just use that? So that's where the name comes from. So we used Team Brood, caused more questions to be answered because people were like, what the heck, and no, it's not a flock of ducks. Technically. So, that's where, and no one had it. I mean, the domain was available. I already owned the one. We used to use zeros in the name because that's how Dave, the original guy, spelt it. And I still own that domain, and if you actually look at the logo, that's why the O's look different in Brood. I don't use it like that anymore, though, because when we first got it, the domain name we had was the 01 because one of my teammates had the 001 in his name and we couldn't get a hold of him. And it caused a lot of emails to get missed and whatnot because people didn't realize those were zeros and they were sending PayPal money to some guy in Indonesia or something. So when I finally got the 001 resecured, I kept it on there, and we don't really acknowledge that those are zeros anymore, but they technically are. So, right. And that was just our way of being different, I guess. So
nice. All right, so I'm going to take this right before I ask you a couple more questions. Just a time to address all these awesome people who are in here watching. Thank you guys for being on. We definitely appreciate all that. We do have a giveaway coming up. It is planned out. We know how we're going to do it, but you're not going to know when it's going to happen. In fact, Eddie, you don't even know when it's going to happen. So that's interesting.
Totally up to you. That way, no one gets scared. I did tell all my team guys that they weren't allowed to win it, though. So I told them that just looks bad. And they all mostly seem to agree with me. I didn't hear back from the Australians because it's like 4 a.m.
Yeah, it's they have a bit of a time difference over there. It's strange.
They do. So the time difference does create some interesting stuff when you're running a business selling the stuff online, trying to talk to people in China and whatnot.
Yep. So anyway, talking to you guys. We do read the comments. We're seeing them. We acknowledge them and all of that, and we'll comment to them afterwards. We'll go down through. I read everything afterwards, and I'll comment and go from there. So you're not commenting for no reason. We will address you in the future. But my next question for you is, you've been running this RC business for a long time. What is your favorite part about running Team Brood?
Build motors. I mean, I love building custom motors. I love jumping in there and being able to tailor a motor just how someone wants it. The challenge of trying to get more and more out of these motors as as possible. That's always been, I like interacting with customers, and a lot of people sometimes will say that they get overwhelmed by my selection and all that stuff, and part of that's by design, I think, because I love to talk about motors. I love to just discuss them and stuff. Some of the more civil conversations I've ever had with homes has just been talking motors.
Mm-hmm.
We don't always agree on everything, but we have sat down, and I think that was Nationals in 2012. Everybody was flipping out because like we ate, maybe it was 2013, but we like ate breakfast together and just kind of sat there and talked about motors and whatnot. So being able to do that, and the cool thing about crawling with the motors is there's no rules. I mean, back in the racing days, we had all these stupid rules, like couldn't use neo magnets, and you couldn't mess with the arm, and you couldn't modify the stuff, and you couldn't do any of this, anything. And there's no rules for crawling. I can do whatever I want. I can use the most crazy materials. Price doesn't matter, because we actually had like price dollar limits in the racing. I mean, they still have those on the brushless motors, but I don't have any of that stuff. So it's all in my imagination. The more I can get out there and think and whatnot, and just sit there and come up with crazy ideas about things to try and things that don't work and whatnot, and and John Holmes, he gets to do that too. I mean, he gets to, we don't have any rules. The same thing with the brushless motors. We don't have any rules to follow. So I was able to do stuff on my brushless motors because I don't care if they're legal for racing, because
right.
It doesn't matter. So but being able to just build something straight out the door from the ground up for one person that literally wants a motor that's one of a kind from them, that's probably the coolest thing for me. So, and I get to work from home, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's awesome. I never really thought about, because I don't have a racing background, so I never really thought about the fact that like you're kind of boxed in that realm where the
it was really boxed in, tons of boxed in, and then not only that, it was the full-blown tech and everything afterwards, where they used to have these stupid rules where like if your motor was too fast, someone could basically pay an impound fee, and they would tear your motor apart. And and if it was legal, then you got the impound fee of $70 or whatever it was at the time. And it sucked because some guys that had money would do it just to get rid of your fast motor.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so we don't have that in crawling. You guys get to argue about tire sizes and all that.
Yeah, I'll take my tire argument every day.
Argue about
those extra rules. Man, I don't feel so bad about the paint your brass rule anymore. That's fine now. I'm good with that. So what is your least favorite part about running the whole Team Brood stuff?
I would probably say that's actually a couple things. I hate being a one-man show for the most part. My wife helps out on some stuff. One of my sons helps a little bit, mostly with background shipping and stuff like that. But like, it's like I got to do the website. I got to build motors, and half the time I got to pack all the stuff and do all the stuff. And I used to have employees, and I don't anymore. I don't sell anywhere near as much stuff as I used to sell in the racing days. I mean, we used to sell 25 battery packs a day. That was just battery packs. And so I mean, I had like a full-time shipping guy back then. That's all he did was sit there and print out labels and whatnot.
Right.
And so being this one-man wrecking crew, it starts to wear on you. And I mean, the other day it was wearing on me pretty bad. I had this long list of crap that I was just trying to get done. Trying to fix the website. I got hacked. Not my website directly. The server got hacked back in October. Took out my website completely, including the new one I was working on. Sent me back all these months. And a lot of people, why don't you just pay a guy to do your website? Well, I sell a unique product with the motors, and by the time I explain it to someone,
right,
I might as well just done it myself. It's like they can't they can't do what I need because they have no clue. I mean, I tried to pay some girl on Fiverr. I don't know if you know what Fiverr is, but it's like
I do. Yep.
Yeah. So I tried to pay some girl on Fiverr to write product descriptions for me. Train wreck. Absolute train wreck. I mean, like the first couple came out okay, and I was like, okay, so this maybe isn't a bad deal for $10 or something like that. And so I ended up paying her like $60 to do a whole bunch of them, and yeah, it was so bad. All she did was sit there and compare the previous product to the next one, and I'm just like, wait, well, that doesn't do me any good. So yeah, it starts to wear, I guess, on you.
Yeah.
I got to remember. I wrote these down because it was bugging me, because that was one of the ones I was like worried about. So
Yeah.
the other one I cannot stand is dishonesty in if you're going to switch brands or you're going to switch sponsorships. I don't care. I mean, to be frank, I'm a big boy. I've been told no before. It's not a big deal. I understand. You might have got a better deal. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, better deals happen. I mean, I come from the racing arena where sponsorships are all over the place, where there's literally guys that are paid to play with RC. I used to pay guys to play with RC cars. I used to have 7 drivers that made $500 to $1,000 a month to race my products. You know, stupid. You know, but that's how it was done. You know, I had friends that made 10 grand a month to play with RC cars, and some of them still do. Doesn't happen in the crawling arena, but people switch, people jump, and that's fine. But don't lie. You know, I've had the most crazy stories about not only just customers switching stuff, but other guys switching stuff, you know, like sponsored ones.
Yeah.
Just, I got a better deal. I wanted to try something new. I can handle this. Cool. But for some reason, some people just love to make up these crazy stories while they're going to jump brands. And I just don't understand it. I guess it makes them feel better about switching and whatnot.
I don't know.
But I don't get it. I mean, my favorite one probably would be the, I won't name him, but maybe he'll figure out who it was. He was fairly local. Guy was not very good, but as we discussed the other night in crawling, I don't put performance as the biggest qualifier for crawling, because it's just so random compared to racing. And but this guy had other stuff that I thought was a decent quality. Well, he didn't do much, bought some stuff, whatever. And then one random day, like, he sends me a message and just says, like, hey, I don't think I'm doing much for the team. I haven't been crawling much lately, blah, blah, blah. Gives me this big old thing. I took it as a legitimate reason for backing off the team, and I was totally fine with that. I actually appreciated the thing. And then I was on RCC later that day, and he's got Holmes Hobbies in his signature. And I'm just like, okay. So I sent him a message, and I was like, and he's like, well, no, after I dropped off the team, Holmes sent me an email. And I was like, come on, dude. I'm like, you're going to tell me with a straight face that 15 minutes after you dropped off the brood team, you got an email from John, and John's like, jump on the team. I was just like, oh my gosh. The best part was, next comp I went to was at Goldendale, and I actually beat that guy, which is sad because I don't crawl very often. So if you lose to me, you shouldn't have been sponsored in the first place. Like, so no, I'm not going to say his name. It's not going to happen. He lives in Washington, though. So the few Washingtonians that are on here will know who I'm talking about, because they all made fun of him at the same time, because it was like a big joke that I beat him at Goldendale.
Yeah.
So, because no one could get over that one rock, but whatever. Hold on, let me look up. There was a third one. I can't remember what it was, though.
Absolutely.
Did you go out of order?
Yeah.
So my other one. No, you're fine. You're fine. So my other one, I can't stand being copied. It drives me nuts, and it's not targeted at anybody. I'm not trying to say one specific person or 5 specific people. China is famous for it. They've ripped off a few of my things before. I just don't like being. I've had a lot of my ideas duked on and then get copied, and people don't like your glasses for some reason. I've seen that.
I don't understand. They need to understand that if I take the glasses off, there will be no more interview because I can't read the words on the computer.
Yeah,
so like,
exactly.
I will sit here and I'll be like,
cool. I don't know what the deal is. So yeah, I mean, he doesn't have a big.
There you go, solved. But I can't see anything, so they got to go back on.
Yeah. So, but it just drives me nuts, and I mean, and it happened back in the racing days too. So it's not anything that's like brand new or whatnot. It's just it's frustrating when you come out with a product and then see it get kind of slammed on and whatnot, and then like the next week, like they're selling the same thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's one of the nicer things with the brush motors is the Chinese don't seem very interested in ripping them off. But I mean, I watched them just rip off so much stuff. It's unreal. My hubs got ripped off the other day. They were the one piece and whatnot. And I saw them on a website and was like, what the heck? And then the website's gone now. So I don't know, maybe if they were even using my pictures. So, it's like, geez Louise, it's like, I mean, they even claimed they were making it a magnesium. So I was like, wow, I didn't know that was popular. So, I emailed my guy that actually produces them for me. And he said he had no clue who it was. And he's been a pretty straight up guy. So I don't really think it was him or had anything to do with it because he is from China. But I don't know. Like I said, it gets frustrating. So don't like my stuff getting ripped off, but there's not a lot you can do about it in today's market. And a lot of people will be like, why don't you get a patent on it? Patents on RC stuff is amongst the stupidest thing you could ever do. You'll spend more money than you'll ever make on the stupid product in the first place. And by the time you get the patent, it's more than likely outdated anyways. So yeah. So
gotcha.
Trying to read these.
They're trying to mess with us. So it's going down through there. I see it.
Seems to be like a Holmes hobby brood battle going on in there. I don't know. I always laugh.
And I'm not surprised.
Love those threads when they get started on the internet.
Oh so, yeah, man. It's like that with every major competitor in any brand of whatever's going on. So yeah. Where did your electric motor knowledge come from? Did it just come from the passion of being in RC and then you kind of just went with it? Or like, do you have schooling in that area?
Well, no. So, got an old story for this one. So my dad was really big into slot cars in the 60s. And if you know anything about slot cars from the 60s and what, those guys did everything. So, just to take a break, Garrett, magnesium is not soft. You might want to Google that. So pure magnesium is soft, not magnesium alloys. So my dad was big into slot cars, and those guys, they would wind their own motors back in the 60s. I mean, they would do all that stuff. I mean, they even sold kits to actually wind your own motor. And so fast forward, I was born in the mid-70s. My mom went somewhere like in 1979 or 70, maybe 80, somewhere around there. And she bought me and my dad an HO slot car kit and said, have fun this weekend. Here's, blah, blah, why she's gone with my little brother who he was supposed to be a girl, so I can't stand him. And so I just remember looking at my dad. She was like, no messing with the motors. And I didn't get it. I was like 5. I guess I gave how old I am away. And so I didn't really understand it at the time, but I remember this because my dad, the first thing he did was we spread it all on the table and he started ripping apart the cars, and he rewound it, to make the motor faster. I don't know if you know what a bi-level house is. You know what a bi-level house is? No. They're the ones where like you walk in the door and you go down up the stairs. Well, we had one of those when I was a kid. And we had one of those huge windows up in the main living room on the top floor, like just this monstrous window. Yeah. Well, I was like 5, okay? And like you only know 2 speeds when you're 5, which is stop and exactly. So I didn't know you were supposed to slow down on the corners, especially after Dad just rewound the motor to be like half the turns. And it went right off the track and shattered that big window. My mom came home to blue tarp and duct tape over the front of the house. Not a happy camper. So that was my first experience winding motors. So fast forward like a year, 2 years or so, like 1981-ish, Stompers had come out, and they were like the big thing, you know, for us
Yeah.
kids. Like, we loved them. They were cool. And, you know, I went to my dad and said, don't these use the same type of motor? So dad showed me how to do it. Screwed up like my first two or three. They were a bit different than a slot car motor, but ended up getting them to work. My Stompers killed everybody at the playground. I guess I've been crawling since the early 80s because that's mainly what we did with our Stompers. I don't know if you know what a Stomper is, but the little teeny.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's amazing how much those things are worth now in some cases. They're like absolutely insane. So, but yeah, so I started rewinding those motors. I even did it for a couple friends, screwed up some of theirs as well. It's kind of a learning experience and whatnot. So, did that obviously. And then, you know, kind of grew out of Stompers. Transformers came out. They're way cooler. So kind of just didn't mess with motors much then. And then when I got into RC cars and I started racing, you know, the whole motor world opened up to me because it was more than just like a Mabuchi, you know, which was what came with my Hornet. You know, it was this seal. They had all these ones with like end bells with these, you know, the brushes that you could take out and all this other stuff. And super, super cool. You know, to me, because it was kind of like dad had showed me this, you know. Now I couldn't rewind them because, you know, RC motors are significantly different than an HO motor or right. In case of a Stomper motor. So I started learning to tune them, and I would talk to everybody that I could. And the guy that owned the local hobby shop, his name was Vance. He was this really cool guy. Showed me a ton of stuff. He had all these cool tools, you know, magnet zapper and all this stuff. And I was really good friends with his son. We were like a couple months apart in age. And so I just learned as much as I could, just as, you know, everything I could. And then used that to, you know, be pretty successful at racing. You know, mine, you know, took breaks, obviously, of course, and whatnot. And then when I decided to start Brood, I hired Big Jim Greenmeyer. And Big Jim, he used to own Checkpoint back in the mid 80s to 90s. He used to work at Trinity, worked at Reedy. Some of the most popular motors in the world that we've seen in the brushed arena were designed by Big Jim. You know, he did have a very unique personality and a pretty big ego. But the guy was an absolute genius with motors. So I paid Jim to be a consultant to help me set up the motor company, kind of learn some of the stuff I didn't know how to do. Because to be frank, I mean, I'd never wound an RC motor because that's just not something anybody did. You know, the balancers alone cost $10,000. You know, and you know, I obviously didn't have one of those way back when. I have like 4 of them now. But you know, it's I used that knowledge that he was able to pass on. And I kept him on as a consultant until he, you know, unfortunately he died of a heart attack about 2.5 years into my company start. And then once I got involved in the racing stuff, I became pretty good friends with Oscar Jansen from Orion, Derek Fertani from Orion, Mike Reedy from Reedy Motors, Ernie Prevetti that owns Trinity, Jim Dieter, who's the head motor guy at Trinity. And so, you know, I just picked their brains. And, you know, a lot of people expected it to take a while for an OEM company. You know, that's what they called us, smaller motor companies like Phantom and whatnot, to jump in and be successful in the racing arena, especially in the modified arena. Well, it took me a year, and we won Snowbirds, and we won, you know, the Reedy race, we won Cleveland, we won the Vegas race, we had world finalists. I mean, my company did very well in the racing arena for a long time. And that knowledge I got in there was enough to let me, you know, just sit there and continue to learn and just pick people's brains. So schooling, none. It's all been by either what I learned from dad way back when or RC guys. And then there has been a few slot car guys that have helped me out over the years that I picked their brains apart. Stuart Coford, Ron Hirschman, Monty Owen, multiple of those guys are all if you think RC motors expensive, you should see slot car motors. They have $600 motors that are good for one run, $600. And people complain that a hand wound motor is $70. So
yeah,
one of these days so we're keeping track of all your questions, guys. I'm just noticing tons of them. So we'll answer them as Adam can read them back, because they're going so fast on the screen. I can't say that.
Yeah.
So,
and so, I mean, guys, that's what happens is, so you guys comment, you talk to each other, you do your thing, and we'll function as an interview and do that. And then I always go back through, I read all the stuff, I comment to all as much stuff as I can. And I go down as soon as I'm done with the show. We do have a giveaway going. In fact, it's like in an envelope. It's strange, weird. I don't know how that's all gonna work or anything like that, but so let's talk a little bit about what makes the Team Brood motors so unique from everything else that's out there, and go from there.
I think that's a few things as well. I think first, every single motor is built to order. Doesn't matter what the heck it is. Brush motors, obviously, brushless motors, they're my design. I do use some parts that have already been developed in China. I wasn't going to pay 10 grand to re-engineer an aluminum can with heat sinking on it. It was stupid. And so, I used their can, and it was available. It was cheap. It worked. It didn't get any different thing. But on the brush motors, all the brush motors are built to order. I don't build them up and put them in a shelf ready to ship, with the exception of stuff that's going to a dealer. I mean, I can't control how long or who it's being built for at that point. I build what they order, I guess.
Right.
But when you order a motor, it's built by me. It's done by me. It's built for you. It's not something I just grabbed out of a box. Now I do certain steps. Before I wind the armatures, sometimes I'll do part of the welding, and it's technically brazing. It's always been called welding though. So the epoxy dipping of the armatures, I'll do that, but that's not something that really is like a tailored thing. But that armature never goes in a can. The comm isn't cut until you order the motor. And, that way you as a customer, you're getting a fresh motor. You're getting a motor that was built just for you, to your specs. And it makes my inventory easier. I don't have to just, I can't remember the last time I sold a 55 turn arm, let alone a 55 turn motor. They used to be all the rage, like when this first kind of got kicked off, but now like I sell like one a year, right? And I honestly could not remember the last time I sold one. So if I have a whole bunch of those tying up cans, just sitting there, I mean, it's just a bunch of dead product that's sitting there, so I have a whole tray of 55 churn and 60 churn and 65 churns arms ready to go for when someone does order one. But I don't build up motors and just let them sit. Now, I know that works for some companies. They move a lot more product than I do and whatnot, and that's fine. I just don't like motors that sit especially with heavy springs on the comm. The comm is made out of soft copper. Get a big heavy spring on that, shoving a carbon brush, which for the most part is harder than the comm.
Right.
And you start to deform. So I do tell a lot of people sometimes that, if you're not going to mess with your stuff for a while, undo those springs. Like, just undo them and let just let the tension off of them. You're not going to take them off. Just pop them off the tab there so they're not tensioning on there. So now some products sell so fast that it doesn't matter. So, but there's still motors sitting in RC shops since the 80s. So
right.
I wouldn't want to run those with their lopsided comm, because I guarantee it's warped. I mean, it's just the way it works. Oh, yeah. So let me look at my other questions over here, or answers here. I wrote them down. Wait, which oh, there we go. We're farther down there. So selection. I got a lot of cool stuff. I have a lot of stuff left over from the racing days: brushes, springs, older trick parts, which allows you to go in there and customize your motor however you want. Some people view that as a downside because they get on the website and they get super confused. Again, part of that's by design because it just takes an email or a message to me to find out, you know, what should I get? You know, what should I buy? And I don't know what some of these, I'm going to ignore these comments. I'm like trying to read them and like they're, oh, I don't even know what that guy's talking about. Right. So, exactly. But you know, I think that stuff is beneficial because people like to buy stuff that is unique to them, you know? So, you know, people like to be different, you know, people like to, you know, to have that. And I offer that. So other companies like to keep down, you know, a very simple product line and limit those questions. And I don't blame them. You know, I don't blame them one bit for not wanting to have a whole bunch of products that confuse the crap out of people. I like it because it allows me to continue to innovate and bring out new stuff. You know, we've brought out multiple new motors over the last 6 months. We got a couple new ones on the way. You know, it's going to make it where obviously people get confused, but, you know, like the long awaited 550 will be out. I used to have this really cool one we sold called the Stump Pumper. A lot of people hated the name, but I loved that. That was awesome. And, but I can't get it anymore. And so we've been trying to do a new 550 and, you know, it's been a process trying to secure the correct armatures, and magnets have actually been the tough deal. So, can I make a square motor? No square motors. I have a motor that has like side stuff coming shortly.
He's messing with you. I made square wheels. So
square. Okay.
So one of the things,
we do have my square motor is going to be available. So the old Trinity stock motors used to have squared sides, and so problem is you can't use them because they have 24 degrees of timing in them, and so which is way too much timing for most motors. And then the moment your truck needs a motor that goes the other way, that's 24 degrees of negative timing, and it's just going to go boom. It's going to blow up. But me, along with my my super CAD nerd, Nick, I'm decent at the CAD stuff. Nick is a stud at it. He redrew the end bell for zero timing. So we're going to have those kits available here shortly, and people will be able to go pick up those old stock and 19-turn motors by Trinity and pop the new end bell on them, put a new arm in them, and have a usable motor. And the cool thing is, because that squared can, they have a little bit of extra clearance down there if they're angled correctly. So I'll grab one before the end of the thing, and I'll show you. I got one of the prototypes here, so because I machined them. So,
that kind of segues like right into the next part of the question. Do you have any goodies sitting around that you can show some of these people, and then maybe talk a little bit about what you got kicking around right there?
Well, let's see. So, I mean, that's the new 550 armature. So 550s they're supposed to be 10 millimeters longer. That's where the whole stupid 550 thing comes from, but they're more like 7 to 8 millimeters longer. So, but the new 550s, this one was damaged in shipping. That's one of the other downfalls of dealing with the Chinese. They pack stuff like crap. Mm-hmm. These literally had no packing at all on them. So every armature around the outside basically was the cushion for them. So I expect the magnets here in a couple days, and the cans are already here, the end bells are already here, and we're winding up these. So we'll have this version available first, and then a 5-segmented version probably will follow within time. So I'm not a big fan of the 5-segment stuff. It has its place, but you give up a lot for what you get, and you get that extra smoothness, but you lose a bunch of torque and you lose a bunch of drag brake, and you know. But people want them, and you know, I know John sells the crap out of them. His Crawl Masters are very popular, and so I have customers that ask for them all the time, and I'm just not going to argue with them. You know, I'll tell them in most cases, I think you should just jump over here and grab that. So everybody wants to see these wheels. So
I agree. It actually folds right into our next comment, man.
it folds right into the next question. So here is a 1.9 wheel blank made out of magnesium. So basically, I'm having the blanks made out somewhere else because, to be frank, they sell me the machined. That basically they're putting the lip in there for me, and they're cutting that center hole and then down to size. We will have different widths available over time, but right now I just went with a couple to kind of get this whole project going. It's taking way longer than I expected. The downside is that this one's a little easier. So this is a 2.2, and I don't know if you can see it in the can. You can see right that little flat edge. Well, the Chinese decided it was a great idea to pack all these in there like that on top of each other, 4 or 5 deep. So almost every 2.2 rim, I think I had 250 come, and I think it was 250. Maybe it was 300. I think there was like 30 usable ones. All the others were dented, and this is a tame one. Some of them are so dented like you can't even get a screwdriver in there. So the company was cool. They're replacing them, but it's thrown it massively behind, unfortunately, because even the ones that weren't fully bent, I mean, they still had marks and stuff in them and whatnot. And and I've gotten slammed because nationals and whatnot have just slowed everything down. So the beadlock rings are on their way right now to get made. So hopefully they'll be here sometime in the middle of June. I've been working on the fixture. You asked me about schooling earlier. I do have a 2-year degree in machining. I did that over the last couple of years. The local community college had set up a really cool machining program, and I went down there and I did the first 2 classes, which were like 20 credit classes. And, by the time I got there, it was like, my counselor, who was also my teacher, was like, "You're already halfway at your degree, dummy." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." So I said, you know what, my Indian tribe pays for it. I'm getting a bunch of free cool tools. I get to use all these big machines. And so I just kept going at it and doing it and got my degree in it and whatnot. And then I got a Tormach CNC mill. Yeah. And so I'll be using that basically to finish these. They'll basically sit in a fixture, and the fixture will allow me to come in there and carve them out. The way I'm setting it up is it'll actually be pretty easy to switch between designs. So not promising anything because I don't want, obviously, like 8 million questions like in my inbox. But it would be pretty easy to switch up designs. So if someone wanted a slot versus a spoke or whatever, I'll be able to do that. They're all going to be set up to use the Brood hubs, which share the same dimension stuff with the Vanquish ones as well. Right. So you can switch between those two. And then, like I said, once we kind of get the first batch done and figured out, the fixture's been a little bit of a challenge. It's been to the point where trying to figure out how to hold 4 wheels correctly so they're not flopping around and they don't pull out on me, because the last thing I want is one of these flying across the room at like a few thousand RPM, which is one of the reasons I started going to school, because I converted my own 2 machines and I came back in with like a fully pale white face because I was doing something on my lathe and it popped out and it pulled the bit, and the bit was actually stuck in the wall and it missed my junk by like a few inches or so. And so I walked in and my wife was like, "Hey, are you okay?" And I'm like, "I think I almost just died." So she's like, "Yeah, you need to go to school if you can." So, and it was worth it. So like I said, I got my degree and I learned. So now I'll be doing these cool magnesium wheels here shortly, but unfortunately it's taken a little bit longer than we hoped.
Yeah. So
these have been on the website for a while now. Those are our magnesium hubs. So unlike an SLW, they don't use a hex, the pin's built in. So one of these weigh less than the hub does, not counting the hex. Now they're making all types of jokes down here. I'm trying not to laugh.
Oh yeah.
But these things are awesome. They haven't quite sold as well as I hoped. You know, and I don't think it's because of the price. They're not much more expensive than a standard you know, SLW hub or the shifts or any of those other ones like that. It's just everybody already has them. So, you know, and I've had a lot of people tell me that. It's like, I already have hubs and like there's nothing wrong with them. So like, you know, while I'd love to save some weight, I don't know if I really want to go spend like 60, you know, bucks to outfit my 2 trucks with new hubs, or in some cases, some of these guys have 6, 7, 8, 10 trucks and start adding up 20 bucks a set or so per hub, you know, so 40 bucks plus a truck starts to add up pretty quick. So they've started to sell better over the time. And, you know, and it was kind of like my first like adventure into magnesium stuff.
Right.
I think that's one of your following questions, right?
It is, man. So I want to.
I guess we'll kind of feed into that one.
Yeah. So I want to pause for just 2 seconds, and I want to address the whole giveaway thing. I'm watching as it's getting later, and so in my part of the world, it's 11 o'clock, and some of the people are starting to trail off. And so, what I'm going to request from all of you, I have like 46 of you on right now. So I'm going to request that you share the video that's going on right now. So I'm going to ask maybe 3-4 more questions of what's going on. So share this live feed, build up our numbers, and then we'll live giveaway. It's in here. Whoa, there we go. But we'll live giveaway, and we'll go from there. So I have like 4 or 5 more questions I want to ask Eddie, and then we'll do that. So if you guys just share, you can share the whole live feed as what's going on, and maybe we can build our numbers up and give some more. Not that I want to take away your odds, but maybe some people want to hear what's going on here at the end. So I appreciate all of you who've been on the whole time. I genuinely do. But my next question leads to the whole you're using magnesium, and I saw already one comment like, hey, that's really soft. But what are the like pros and cons versus magnesium versus steel? I mean, people said brass was soft when the whole brass thing started. So
brass is extremely hard. I don't know where they're getting that from. Brass machine's easy, so that's where it gets the whole soft thing. But brass is not it's not really what I would call a soft. I mean, it's actually fairly hard. Machine's like butter though. It's great. So magnesium in its pure form is fairly soft, which is why it's used for flints and all that stuff. We're not using pure magnesium, guys. No different than your aluminum parts aren't pure aluminum. They're aluminum alloys. So those alloys have other components to them. Aluminum itself has some magnesium and some of it to whatnot. So magnesium, I use what's called the AZ31 alloy, which is for all intents and purposes, basically the magnesium version of 6061, which is the most common aluminum alloy out there. Probably 95% of all RC parts that are made out of aluminum are made out of 6061. There's some stuff made out of 7075, but in general, most of it's 6061. So magnesium, the reason you don't see it a lot is it has a whole bunch of urban myths associated with it. Number one, it'll catch on fire. That's the most popular one known to man.
I was waiting for that one.
Yeah. So basically, when you're machining magnesium, if you're catching on fire machining it, you're an idiot. I mean, that's the long and short. You're an absolute idiot if you catch it on fire while you're actually machining aluminum or magnesium. Just an absolute moron. Where the fires typically happen from magnesium is that you're throwing off all those shavings, okay? And if you don't clean up those shavings, the dust and all that other stuff like that, and then you go machine something like titanium, stainless steel, even just some steels in general, titanium throws sparks like I mean, you go on YouTube and watch a titanium machining video, and it throws sparks like there's no tomorrow. Big, bright, white flashes. That's why titanium's a major component in fireworks. That's what starts the fire. Those sparks end up into the poorly cleaned up pile of magnesium shavings, and then it starts a fire. Now, when magnesium starts on fire, that's bad. It's really bad. You can't pour water on it. Water is gas. Basically, it burns so hot that it basically will turn the water into hydrogen, and then the hydrogen, I assume everybody's familiar with like the Hindenburg or something like that. And it burns so dang hot, it literally will just burn through the earth. When I was a kid, we used to go buy old Volkswagens at the auction that had the magnesium trans cases. Kind of regret that now because they're actually like people pay for those. We used to buy them 20. And we would take it out. We would stump jump it until it fell apart if we could get it running. And then we would burn it because that magnesium transfer case would like burn a hole in the earth. And it was awesome. It was like, it would burn so hot and so bright. It was cool. Now, I've been around magnesium my entire life. Basically, my dad is huge into drag racing. He's been around it forever. They use it on tons of stuff. The old Hildebrand wheels, they were all magnesium. That's what all the guys ran back in the days on their drag cars. That's where the term mag wheel comes from. It wasn't aluminum. They were magnesium wheels. That's where the term comes from. And so, you know, I've been around it and I've always known about it. But when we were in the racing arena, I tried to get some parts, but we were a motor and battery company back then. And we sold so much stuff of motor and batteries. I just didn't really mess around with a lot of other stuff because, I mean, we just didn't have time. I mean, you know, we were selling couple thousand motors a month, 500 to 1,000 battery packs a month. I mean, my guys were just totally busy. So I just didn't really care. But it was always in the back of my mind, like, it'd be cool to make something out of magnesium, but like what, you know? And so when we got over to crawling, I started messing around with it. And it's impossible to find anyone in the United States to machine it. No one wants to touch it because of all the urban legends.
Right.
No one wants to mess with it. I mean, some states even have weird requirements on it because you can't put it out with a regular fire extinguisher. You got to have what's called a Class D fire extinguisher. And that's always made it nuts. And so what I ended up doing was, I went to China. They'll make anything. I mean, they don't care. And I did meet some resistance, but I did get some parts made. And the biggest thing over there is I mean, a lot of the raw magnesium, like, China controls like 70% of like the world magnesium reserve. So it's way cheaper to just buy the material. So in the case of this wheel, I get this machined wheel to this point cheaper than I can buy the material here in the United States. Cheaper than I can buy them. And it sucks. And, I wish I could buy in the US, but I mean, I can't, I can't, I mean, it's literally like over 3 times the price to buy just the raw magnesium here. So the advantages of magnesium, regardless of what's in there, is not softer. Its characteristics are almost identical to 6061 for the AZ31 alloy that I use. But it's 65% of the weight. Okay. So, obviously something that weighs 10 ounces is now going to weigh 6.5 ounces, just for easy math. 30% weight savings where you want it is a big deal. And I know people love to throw weight on all these other parts, but rotating weight sucks. Yeah. You're making rotating weight on your truck. You're not doing it right. High weight sucks. We did a lot of testing on when we made our very first magnesium parts, which were standoffs. We made some prototype ones on a manual lathe with a machinist friend of mine way back when, Jeremy Tony, who owned Y-Town Crawlers, Dave Cape, and a couple. They had the testing on it. I mean, just as strong, none of them bent, no problems, but literally our entire set weighed less than half because of the way we made them, along with the standard weight savings of the material, than what the aluminum ones did. And but I couldn't get them reliably made, not to mention all the chassis manufacturers in the comp area.
Mm-hmm.
They all have to have their own size standoff. I don't get it one bit. Like, I asked for like 4 of them and I got like 800 different sizes. So it was just impossible to try to make them. So weight is the main one. I mean, that's obviously your main. Now, magnesium does have a dampening characteristic that is off the charts. It has 10 times the dampening capabilities of the next closest metal. I have no clue what the next closest metal is, which can be used to your advantage because it's going to kind of, depending on the part, act as a secondary shock.
Gotcha.
There's a company out there that I've kind of followed and watched for a little bit. Their name is escaping me at the moment. They make magnesium frame bikes. Just Google it. You wait 2 years to get one of these bikes. So if you buy one today, you get it 2 years from now. The bikes are pretty much entirely magnesium. The guy makes crazy stuff with these things. He's welding it, sanding it, nothing's catching on fire. So, you know, I read someone say something about a lipo with magnesium fire. Yeah, I mean, what's the difference at that point? Like, I mean, if you're go big or go home. I mean, if you're putting your hand in there to rip a magnesium, you know, part off of it before the lipo catches it on fire, yeah, okay. Yeah, you're. So I've actually taken some outside with a torch and held it on there for like minutes and couldn't get it to catch on fire. Like, I could not get it to catch on fire. So I took some shavings. It took a little bit, got those to catch on fire. So more magnesium parts are coming. I got a new one that we're still working on. So these are the standard length axial clone magnesium standoff. I think they're 70 millimeters or 75 millimeters. Maybe one of the nerds there might know. I don't know. So, but for some reason, China didn't want to. They didn't want to drill them, so we have to drill them all ourselves. So, and I'm going to tap them all 440 just to piss off all of the M3 guys. So many people were so mad that we put 440 threads in our in the hubs that I was just like, I mean, they're 440 is good stuff. Yeah. So
yeah. All right.
More threads.
So I, for one, can't wait to see what comes of the magnesium wheels. I've been watching in the wings. I haven't said a lot about them, but I'm always curious about different materials, different stuff. It's one of my favorite parts about the scale side of it is that people get to be different and do different things and do stuff that's off the wall. And when I heard magnesium, my brain was just like on fire. So, not to do the whole like fire pun, but anyway, so let's talk a little bit about this whole giveaway and what we're going to do with that. And so I have in my envelope a number. My number is between 1 and 100. So the first person who types my number in as a comment, you will win whatever Eddie says you're going to win right now. And so I'll open it. I'll show it to you before the end. He doesn't know the number. I'm the only person that
I don't
knows
know
the number.
Actually, I don't even know how any of this is working. So you guys go about your bad selves. So yeah. You're getting a doomsday motor. That's what you're getting.
There we go.
So that's my heat sinked machined can 30 or 35 churn. And Bill, look at all these numbers getting guessed.
Yeah, man. I think it's gonna blow up real fast. So I can go back through and see who was first. If multiple people hit it, that's no big deal. But there is definitely a number in here. It's twice my favorite number, or not twice. It's 2 of my favorite numbers. If anybody knows what that is, that's for you.
Sure.
Wow. So, all right, man. So I think we can continue while they're doing that, and then I will. I'll bump the whole
what question
thing if I see it.
Like,
you know, we're getting down to the truck part, and so I think I'm gonna lump all of the truck questions into one thing, and I think I'm just gonna say, man, let's talk a little bit about how you build trucks now because it's changed. And I think that was unique. So I think it was worth mentioning.
It can be a touchy subject for me because, like, you know, when we first like kind of got into the whole crawler thing. I had a hobby shop. I had an indoor track. You know, we had sold some motors already for some crawlers and whatnot and stuff. But of course, Corey's the one that put 69. Could have guessed that long before.
So you know, guys, I've already I have seen the number that's in here, so I'm just gonna hold it up.
Okay.
So I'm literally opening it. So if you were the first one, and you can scroll back up and see, with a 77, that's who's got the motor, and you're gonna need to message Eddie. He's got the motor, he's got the whole hookup on the stuff, and go from there. I don't know who it was for sure. I mean, comments were rolling like crazy fast. So whoever had that first, that's the winner.
It out. Yeah. So, okay. So back to the question about trucks. Okay. So, you know, like when we first kind of, like we had customers asking us about motors and we started building them over time. I mean, I can trace back, you know, a crawler motor technically all the way to like the first year of my company. And, yeah, you know, we didn't really understand what the heck we were building. We just had some guy be like, "Hey, I need a slow motor." You know, okay. You know, which was not normal for us at the time because we were trying to go fast, you know. So, you know, I was really like, hey, this crawler thing is like really cool, man. Like, you know, and where I live in Washington, we kind of have some rock crawling stuff, like full size stuff. We got some really big like ORV parks and stuff like that. And so, you know, I went to the local rock pit, bought a bunch of rock, had it delivered. Even got some of this crazy lava rock, which I don't know if you ever played with that stuff. You can get like a rock that is literally like huge, but it weighs like a pound. And it tears up tires, so don't use that. And so, you know, we wanted one right now. So we found some guy down in Portland that had one and another guy down somewhere else. And I bought those and they got shipped up to us. And we're like, wow, this is really cool. And then we discovered RC four-wheel drive. And RC four-wheel drive was really new at the time. And I think I was their third or fourth dealer. And they had these crazy requirements. They wanted me to buy like $25,000 worth of stuff at a time. And I'm like, what? Geez, like, you know, Tower Hobbies doesn't require that, right? You know, so I got a ton of that stuff, and you know, and I built trucks. I mean, I built trucks. I got one of those G-made crawlers. I built that. I got one of the first AX Axial ones. I mean, I've been around Axial before they were doing crawler stuff. They originally tried to do like racing gas engines, and I loaned them a couple of my drivers to test and do that stuff. And, you know, got a Berg when that whole thing, one of my guys had the remnants of his Cloudbuster from when he was a kid. And we saw the stick thing on there and we went out down to Lowe's and bought ourselves a piece of aluminum. That was the worst thing ever. I don't know who came up with that. So, you know, so I built trucks back then. I mean, I had more time and, you know, and whatnot. And so I built my XR10. I built my second XR10 mostly. I built my Losi myself, you know, but it just got to the point where I just didn't have a lot of time. I have 4 kids. One of them plays extremely competitive hockey. It just was a time factor. And, I just didn't have a lot of time to do it. So JB, who was one of my original crawler driver guys local to me, he was kind of like my pit guy, I guess. And he was just like, "Here, I'll build it for you." Oh, okay, cool. And after that kind of happened, I was like, I mean, I had some race cars built like that back in the day too, but I was like, this is much better. And, you know, to be frank, it's like, there's so much crazy tech that you guys got going on with suspension angles and all that stuff. I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, it's like I'm over here trying to build like really cool motors and everything, and I don't care about your big tire, small tire argument. Just like give me something I can go drive. And so, you know, it's like my Bergs were built by JB for the most part. My one Sporty I built. My other Sporty I got from Ted Rocks. Great guy. Bummer that he died, but he was an awesome dude. He, you know, and he actually gave me a Berg too for basically nothing. Jason won? No, redo that, man. Can we
I'm
switch
going.
for?
Listen,
I
I've
I
been
know.
watching them argue about who won forever. Like it's in the
Oh, okay.
comments,
I just
guys.
saw
Like
Jason.
when
Isn't
when
Jason
it
our-
ends, we can go
Isn't that
back and
Jason
we
the
can
art-
see from the beginning.
Jason? Jason? Yeah. So you gonna send it to Badger? That guy doesn't like me. So you know, I used to get flipped a lot of crap, like back on RCC back in the day. Like I didn't crawl, I had never crawled, I'd never built a truck, I don't own any trucks. Okay, I mean, I don't even know where that came from. So, do I get to crawl very often? No, I don't. In the competition scene, do I take my trucks outside and screw with them? Yeah, when I want to try a motor. Yeah. I like going fast better, to be frank. I like racing, so it's. But I don't have time to do that either. So, and crawling makes it a little bit easier because I can just go out and crawl down, like the steps on the side of my house or onto my neighbor's thing that doesn't like me. So, it's one of those weird things to me. It's like I get flipped a lot of crap about it, but on the flip side, how many motors do you guys build? Exactly. So I do what I'm good at, and I let someone else do something that they're good at, and then that way, I can go out. So like my current scalar truck, I got from, I got from Adam. Adam sent it to me a while back for traded me some stubbies. I think we traded stubbies for it, something like that. The truck's awesome. I need to put a BC in it though, because like I think he sold it to me mostly as like a roller. I think it had some electronics, and yeah, that servo and the speed control do not. So I got to go find that thread on RCC that yes, you need a BEC. So, but that's the long and short of it. Don't crawl a ton because I just don't have a lot of time. So
yeah.
I'm not a big outdoors guy either. I don't really like the sun. So like, when it rains a lot, I don't mind the rain, but like when it rains, no one wants to rain. And one of the things with our comp group up here too is we love to try too hard to go too many different places.
Yeah.
So do I like my customers? I love my customers. So does my wife RC? I let my wife drive an RC car once, and she ran it right into the wall. Hopefully she's not. So, but no, she does not RC. So yeah. My wife doesn't do any of the hobby stuff with me other than pack boxes. So, but I've built tons of RC cars. Like I remember when I was reading your questions here, I mean, I didn't know if you were talking about like scalers or crawlers or just RC cars in general.
Yeah, in general, man.
If we're gonna start counting RC cars. I've probably built over 1,000.
Yeah.
I used to work at a hobby shop as a kid. I used to build 2 to 3 a weekend for customers, and built them for friends all the time and, whatnot. So, I mean, I've built way more RC cars than I can ever count. But, now it's like I can build motors, let someone else build the crawler for me, how it should be built. And when they break, I fix them myself usually. I mean, it's, they're not overly complicated devices. So, but I just don't get a lot of time to go out and do it. So, but some people love to harp on that. So, you don't test products.
Yeah. A one-man business, like I get it. I understand.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
You list your stuff, you build your stuff to custom orders. You're running the website, you're doing the shipping, you're doing all that. And with me running just the little bit of stuff that I do, I do have a full-time job. I do all of that, but when you tack that onto my full-time job, that's like another like legit job, and I really don't do much, and I know you do way more than I do. So let's talk a little bit about do you follow anybody currently in the scale realm of what's going on in the hobby, and if so, who?
Well, I don't think I follow anything like a certain person directly. I mean, I'm in most of the groups and stuff on Facebook. I'm terrible at remembering names, so you'll have to forgive me. There's a guy I follow on YouTube, and he doesn't do all crawlers. He does some other like scale-ish type, model builds where he'll do like, I don't know, like rat rods and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But some of our local guys, they do some crazy stuff. And I watch their builds and their articles and stuff. I just don't overly pay attention to like, oh my gosh, and the name and stuff like that. I just kind of look at the thing and be like, hey, that's
Right.
That's really cool. That's a really cool way to build it. I do follow the Danny guy. I just saw someone mention that. I do watch his. That's not who I was talking about. He makes really cool stuff. He uses all Holmes motors though, so can't really go with that there. I do remember Bracey's dad. That guy was absolutely hilarious to watch on RCC. But he makes cool stuff too. But his stuff's kind of like it's not really crawler stuff, I guess, to a degree. I mean, I guess it's kind of scale, but I mean, he does some crazy stuff with all the animation and stuff like that and whatnot. So I do check. That actually might be it. RC Every Day. Is that guy on YouTube? That might be it. I don't have my YouTube on this computer. It's on my other computer. But I think that is it though. RC Every Day. Sounds very familiar. So like I said, I look at all types of cool stuff, and when I see certain things that don't make sense to me or I don't understand it or whatnot, I ask, and you can ask my team guys like Adam or any of them. If I don't know what the heck something is, I mean, I'll be like, what is the point of that? I mean, like one of those things I saw the other day was that guy that made those disc brake hubs that spin on a bearing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wasn't rotating weight because it's spinning on a bearing. Yeah, that's not the way that works. No. I mean, it's still inertia, so
right.
it does reduce it. It's still inertia. So
right.
Nifty idea, I guess, but it's definitely not going to work the way you're supposed to make it work. So, but there's so much cool stuff out there. It's hard to keep track. I mean, I saw a Unimog not too long ago. That thing was awesome. I don't remember who built it. They clearly had hundreds of hours of work in that thing. I highly doubt it was Badger. I don't pay attention to anything that guy does. But it was awesome. One of my local drivers, Chris Boggs, he runs Fifth Dimension RC. He's got an absolutely awesome scale truck, and he's not a big scale guy either. I know everybody tries to always buy it from him. I don't even know if he sold it or not, but that truck's awesome. Looks cool. The stuff's cool. The only thing I think with the scaler stuff is so much work is put in some of those things. Like absolutely the craziest amount of, just model building to a degree, and then you take it and dump it in a creek, like with 2 pounds of mud on it. And I'm just like,
that's the point, man. If the guys were gonna build models that just sat on the shelf, like they just built.
Some of them do though. I mean, I built
know.
a pair of motors for a Clodbuster the other day that were like literally like $250 pair of motors. Guy put them in, made a video of him going whamp, 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 and then now it sits on the shelf.
Yeah, I'm not a shelf guy. I'll build whatever I build, but it's gonna get run, it's gonna get scratched, it's gonna get dirty, it's gonna get muddy. If you're gonna do it, like that part is the best part. Putting the scratches on it, each one's earned. Putting the mud on it, I mean, it is what it is.
So. Yeah, or a few of our crawling places are on like the sides of mountains,
right?
And so I've seen stuff tumble down. Yeah, yes, $1,200 Technocraft wheels. That guy's clearly old school if he knows what Technocraft is. That was old.
That was
old aluminum wheel, man, that was on aluminum part company, whatnot. Cool stuff, but like sells for insane amount of money now. So yep.
That was on my last interview. Actually, it's crazy. Mike Lohman put them on. I think it was a Bruiser or something. I'm blanking.
Technocraft did make a wheel way back when that did fit. I mean, it was meant for the Bruiser back then, and they're really rare. They only make a couple hundred sets of them because I mean, Bruisers in general are rare. Some idiot at my neighborhood garage sale like 2 years ago got a Bruiser for $10. Insane. So yeah, I know. Let's talk about lotto ticket, right? So had the box and everything. So
all right, so
So
as we get down there, like my next question that I feel really truly applies here is, if you're gonna give advice to someone, and I primarily am focused in the scale crawling aspects of what's going on, but if you're giving advice to someone in the, it was a Blackfoot, everybody's announcing, yes, I know I got it wrong, my bad. Sorry, Mike, it's my bad. But anyway,
well, those are pretty rare too, though, the Technocrat Blackfoot ones.
Yeah,
not as rare as the Bruiser ones. So
right.
Anyway, so advice. I wrote this question down too because I was like, that's a nice one. So, which one was it?
It's like 23. If you're gonna give advice to someone out there, like that's starting out at a comp, what are you gonna do?
I would say the same thing we tell people in racing: avoid the pitfalls of thinking that you need to go buy the best of everything and only have the most trick stuff and all that crap. To be frank. A good example of this is Billy Easton, big RC racer, used to race for Associated and whatnot way back in the day. He won a world championship like 2005, 3-ish, somewhere around in there. And his RC10 was pretty much stock. I mean, it was pretty much the same thing that Joe Blow could go buy at the store and put together. And he won a world championship with that. And, and I see, when I do get to go to comps, is some of these guys show up with these crazy trucks. I mean, they have every single hop-up part you can think of, and they've spent all these crazy amount of time, putting all these fancy parts on, and spent big bucks on motors and batteries and speed controls and just the best of everything. And then they come out to their first comp and they get the crap kicked out of them. And that's going to happen. You're going to get the crap kicked out of you, whether it's racing or crawling or in its comp or scale or whatever. These other guys that have been coming out here this whole time, they've been doing this for a while. They understand the tire foams and the setups and all that other stuff that actually make a difference versus like some fancy magnesium part or something like that. Now, when you get to the level that everybody's on that same skill thing or, close to it, that's when those parts can make a difference, But I always tell people, keep it simple. Go out there and don't think you need to fall in that pit trap of like just spending tons of money to go compete, because you're going to go spend $1,000 when you could have spent $500 and you're still going to get your butt kicked. I mean, I get my butt kicked when I go to these, except for that one guy. I beat him. That was so but don't fall in that pit trap. Don't fall in the pit trap that you think that you need all these fancy, expensive parts, and it doesn't matter what type of part it is. I'm talking everything. What was that, Ryan with the RTR there? So, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Just get out there and compete and start learning the ropes, and then start upgrading your truck and spend that time and effort tuning and learning to tune your truck versus trying to figure out how to put this fancy aluminum part on that you bought, or how to configure this super complicated speed control that you just bought that you didn't really need, because that the Hobby Wing 1080 or whatever. Those things are super easy, like $40, and they work great. I mean, even John's speed control, the BRXL, super easy to program, pop that thing right in and drive, and it's $100.
Yep.
You don't need a $275 speed control that has all these fancy features, most of which are for racing anyways, to make you competitive. It's not going to make you competitive, because the long and the short of it is, it's just like in racing, track time, or in this case, trail time, I guess, or rock time, whatever you want to call it. That's what makes the difference, is getting that time with your setup. And, so many people, I watch it. I mean, I used to see it when I owned my hobby shop, when I used to work at a hobby shop. These guys would just come in there and they'd buy a brand new RC10 and they'd spend all this money putting all these stupid aluminum parts on there. I don't know if we have any old school guys. We used to have a company called Hot Trick. We called it hot crap because it looked cool. It was expensive, but in the end, it wasn't better than the stock stuff, but it looked cool,
Right.
It looked great. So this Jeff guy really loves Holmes Hobbies. Go about yourself, good guy. He said it like 800 times at this point. So, But I had a customer recently, a very good example. He saw a pair of stubbies that I had made. I'd made two singles. I made a matching. A lot of times when I make like a fancy one, I'll make a matching one. And so he's like, "Hey, I want that motor." And I was like, "Okay, well, what are you going to put it in?" And he gives me the rundown, and I'm just like, "Yeah, you don't really need a stubby for that. I mean, that's just not what they're for, and I don't think that's the best motor choice for you. I'd love to sell you a $250 motor, but honestly, I'm selling you something you don't need."
Yeah.
And his response back to me was, "But it's the most expensive one." Okay. Actually, it wasn't, but I mean, I could not talk this guy out of not buying the $250 motor. And then he managed to get the motor, screwed it up again, and then sent it back in twice. And I rebuilt it both times, first time for free. And he ended up just selling it. And of course, it was the motor's fault that it didn't work right in his application. I actually told him, like, this is not the motor you need, but his response was, but it's the most expensive. And I seen the guy over the course of like months afterwards doing the same thing, buying super expensive stuff and then blaming the product because he takes it out and it just doesn't work. So
yeah,
I don't have four everything. What are you talking about? So
I don't know that they're all talking to even us. So
oh, I know. Is that? Oh, Jason. Okay, I thought he was talking to me. I was like, what do I have for?
I don't know. They have their own conversations going on back there, and I'm not sure exactly what else.
I don't know about yours, but I only see two comments at once.
Yep.
Like if you're not quick enough, I'm like, man, I have no clue what to do.
Oh no, sometimes they're like, super fast.
So if he's talking about Adam and stubbies, Adam has way more than 4 stubbies. Like that guy's got a record. So
okay, man. So I guess I'm gonna like. The end of this was very scale crawler oriented, and you're very motor oriented. So
well, I can answer. I think I actually had answers for the other questions that you had.
Yeah.
Did you have the 25? Was that the next one?
Yeah. I mean, where do you see it going?
Oh no, your 24 was the next one.
Yeah. So if you could give a piece of advice to a new driver on how to set up their rig for a competition, what would it be?
Don't reinvent the wheel. Plain and simple. Same
Sorry,
that's racing. Just go copy other people's crap. I mean, for the long and short, it's just a setup. You're not stealing someone's part.
Right.
You're not copying someone's, whatever. Like, go see what the guys that are winning are running, and it's so easy now. When I was a kid, I mean, like, we had to go to the track and we had to go up to Joe Blow Fast Guy and be like, "Hey man," and see where he had his ball links mounted and steering linkage and everything, trying to figure out, and then somehow try to schmooze him to see what shock oil he was running, because that was always like a secret thing and whatnot. And so now it's a joke. It's all online. Like, you can go on Facebook and just find any of it. So don't reinvent the wheel. Find out what other people are running on your truck.
Yeah.
What are they running for foams and offsets of that and shock locations and all that, just all of that stuff. Find out what those guys are running, okay? And start from there, okay? And then this goes back to Dad, one change at a time, okay? So many people love to come in and be like, "Oh, I'm going to move this link and I'm going to change the shock oil, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that." And they change all this stuff, and then they get out there and it doesn't work. And now you don't know if it was A, B, C, D, or E that actually caused the problem, or if none of them worked or whatnot. So, one change at a time, it takes longer, but it's more efficient. And then once you figure out if that change worked or not, then make the next change. And then I used to do it. I know lots of people still do it. Keep track of what you're doing, of your changes, because it's possible a change you make, like say today, and then you make some other changes, and then you realize that maybe that change was causing a problem. Well, you might not remember what it was set at before. So keep track. Keep track of what, make yourself a setup sheet or cheat sheet or something like that. So, I see so many guys that struggle, just to set up their truck because they're trying to do it all under. Just ask for help. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, there's people out there that are kind of jerks about it and whatnot, but the internet is full of cool dudes that are totally willing to help set up your truck. And honestly, that's what a lot of these sponsored guys are for, from both sides, from whatever company. It doesn't matter what company you're with. That's part of your job. Part of your job is to help these people. It might not be a motor that you're helping them with, but it goes a long way to promote your company that you're running for when you help, the kid, do that. Am I gonna sell sealed can crawler motors? Probably not. I hate those things. But maybe. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of them. So,
all right.
We'll see. So, okay. Now we're on 25. What's that one?
Oh, yeah. So, where do you see the scale crawling community headed in the coming years, man?
I think we're already seeing the shift like we saw in comp crawling. So, comp crawling basically got to the point where like the trucks were big dollars. I mean, like, I think my last 2.2 Pro that I had, or whatever the heck they call them, modified now or whatever. I think like the sticker price on that thing was like over $5,000 or something. It was something stupid. I mean, it was just so crazy amount of money. And like my 2.2S that I got from Ted Rocks, which I really regret selling that truck to Adam. I think it was way back when. That truck was probably $2,000, and that was supposed to be like the budget class or whatever. Right. And so it just drove people away. It was like they'd show up, and yeah, they know they're going to get their butt kicked, and they know they're going to do that, but then it was this realization that if I want to be competitive in 2.2 Pro or 2.2S, I got to spend like thousands of dollars to move that. See, he still has my damn truck. That was one of your questions. So, it was one of those, it drove people away. And so people went over to the scaling thing where it's sort of like literally you could just go buy like an axial, SEX10 or whatever, do a couple things to it and like go out and be fairly competitive. Like you could go out and be competitive. The problem we're seeing, and we're seeing it already, is that some of those people are migrating over that are spending big bucks, and the price of these trucks are going through the roof. Oh, yeah. And you're getting guys in there. And I saw it when I was at Nationals over by Wenatchee or whatnot last summer. Well, it was actually right around this time last year. They're not there for the scale thing. They don't even care about the scale points. They just were there to win. And it was all about winning. It was competitive. And there was even minor arguments and whatnot, over like stupid stuff, obviously. But, so now we're seeing like a shift kind of back to the comp crawlers, because like the comp crawlers have kind of like gone down. So I think we're going to see like kind of an evening of it where, neither one is dominating the other and they both still exist. But, we've already seen the start of the shift because, we've already had the whole rules, like, continuous rules to cover loopholes, paint your brass black and everything, and and stuff like that. And that thread was 8 million people long. And then we had the other organization that showed up that was trying to make scaled down rules simpler. Well, all that is a product of exactly what I'm saying is the rigs were getting expensive and the ultra competitive people were coming in there, and it all starts to factor in. And that's why the extra the rules get made and people get mad, and groups get created just to bash it's a bummer. And we see it in racing to a degree as well. We've seen shifts where the touring cars were the most popular thing known to man, and off-road was dying, and then suddenly gas off-road made a huge comeback, and then it's just all a cycle. So I think we'll see a smooth out. I don't see it going anywhere. I mean, the trucks are popular. I'm a firm believer that Horizon Hobbies now owning Axial is a good thing, not a bad thing. I've been around this hobby industry way longer than probably 99% of the people out there have. And to be frank, Tower Hobbies in Great Plains was one of the absolute worst things in this industry. You had a mail order company that was selling stuff cheaper than a hobby shop could buy it for.
Yeah.
And you could only buy it from their distributor, which is Great Plains. And, you know, I wasn't one bit upset when I saw that they were in bankruptcy. And then when Horizon was like, we put a bid in and everybody was saying it was fake. And I was like, I knew it wasn't fake because I have friends that still work at Horizon. And they're like, it's not fake. And so I was like, awesome. So, and when they won the bid, double awesome. So I think you'll see good things come out of that. I read today, I'm still waiting for confirmation from a buddy of mine that works for Horizon to a degree, is that supposedly we might see a portaled axial truck. So
interesting.
I don't know. My buddy might tell me, he might not know. They're still technically separate companies, so we'll see. So, but yeah. I think when you see stuff like that, you know, where companies like, you know, are still pushing the scale trucks, that's cool. I'd like to see some of the companies come back out with comp trucks, because though the XR10 I thought was massively over engineered in multiple spots, like that imaginary cutting brake that we were never got. It was still a cool truck, and it made it where people who wanted to comp could walk into their local hobby shop and buy something that they could throw down on the rocks and actually function. I'm never going to tell you a source, and I don't know who Mike is. So more than one person works at Horizon Hobby. And, so, yeah, they own this cool company called Team Losi. So yeah. So I have multiple friends that work at Horizon.
Yeah, man. With being in the hobby as long as you have, I'm sure you've met tons of people. We used to put all the big races, you know, you just start to become buddies with these and, you know, these guys and whatnot, and you talk to them and that. So, you know, the Bully 2 is a good example, I guess, but the problem is the damn thing's rarely in stock. And I don't care what anyone says, because I've checked multiple times, and like sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. And then, yeah, RC four-wheel drive, I mean, they don't have the best rep when it comes to certain customer service stuff. I think it's a cool truck and whatnot, but it still wasn't what the XR10 was. And the XR10 was something that every hobby shop could get. Every hobby shop could stock one. That's not as easy with RC four-wheel drive. It's, you know, they're not set up for the part SKUs and stuff like that. It's not brain surgery when you go axial kit and then you tell them like, hey, I want the parts kit with it as well. And you can't do that with RC four-wheel drive. So hobby shops tend to avoid that because it just complicates their day. If they wanted to sit there and order from each individual manufacturer, they would. So while it has its place, it's a cool truck, it's still not what the XR10 was. And I wish they would bring back the XR10 in some format of some functionality, but I've been told that is not very likely. So probably not good. So most of the molds are, my understanding. From my understanding, they lost like a large, significant amount of the XR10 molds. And the whole thing happened with, it wasn't just their factory. I mean, other people had stuff made there too, and it was this big cluster thing where like the molds basically got seized by the bankruptcy court or some crap like that. I'm not Tower's bankruptcy. It was the company that produced the stuff overseas for them. So but that story's so wishy-washy all over the place. I've heard like 40 different versions of it. So gotcha.
But Tara's never. Okay. So
anyway, I'm kind of getting down to the end here. I was going to ask you if you have sponsors, but more or less you're sponsoring people. So,
yeah, I don't, no sponsors for me. I don't compete enough to do that. I mean, I have some companies that I'm buddy with. The Tekin guys are awesome. They've always taken care of me when I've blown up a speed control or something like that. I guess I can pretend I'm sponsored by some company, but no. you know, like I said, the Losi guys used to take care of me as well, but I just don't compete enough for that stuff. So it's not something I'm like, hey, send me a free truck that I'm going to use like 3 times a year.
Right. So yeah. Okay. So, man, first off, thank you for being on.
No problem.
Genuinely a wealth of knowledge, like more knowledge than I have by far about the motor stuff and all of that. My next question, like, and it's the final one, is like, what should we expect to see next from you? We talked a little bit about the Magnesium stuff. Anything else like loaded, ready to go that isn't out there yet?
Well, let me think here. So we have a couple new motors in the works. Me and Nick have been working on basically the new version of the stubby and whatnot. It's kind of similar to my Nexus and Genesis, but just scaled up to use regular magnets. Not a big fan of the Neo magnets and the Cobalt magnets. They're a pain in the butt to work with. The startup is just not as good as the ceramics. We've been, you know, unfortunately, we got some bad news the other day that TDK, which is one of the big magnet companies out there, they're no longer going to produce the FB12 magnet, which was slightly more powerful than the standard magnets that we use. Mm-hmm. And so I use them on a lot of custom motors and whatnot. Can't get them anymore. They're done. John used to use them in his, I think he used them in the Torque Masters and the Crawl Masters. And I noticed that some of the newer ones that I had done rebuilds on didn't have them. And then I looked at his website and he's actually corrected it and put that they have FB9s in them again. Mm-hmm. And so I'm guessing he got the same bad news that I did, which was those magnets are done. My guess is TDK wanted a huge amount built or made, and Sagami didn't. Sagami's the company over in Japan that some of the motor stuff comes from. Didn't want to pop for what they wanted made because it's basically just me, John, and Tekin now that produce the high performance motors and buy from Sagami. And so, you know, a bit of a bummer, but I mean, it is what it is. But we're working pretty hard on that motor. I mean, we ran into some design issues with when we tried to scale it up from the same design, like certain stuff collided and it didn't work quite as easy as we wanted to. But it'll be a fully modular motor like the Nexus and Genesis were, where the bottom plate and the top plate come off, and then the end bell is completely sealed on the rims, so you don't have that rubbing on the rocks. That's one of the flaws with you know, brushed motors is you got to remember these things were made to go in racing cars and hobby cars. They weren't designed to drag over the rocks. And so like when someone pops an end bell off, I kind of laugh, you know, when they get all mad about it. And it's like, well, they weren't designed to sit there. It's just a clamp. So you sit there rubbing it on a rock, you know, the clamp's going to work its way loose and it's going to pop off, and you're mad about that? I mean, I'm sorry. How do I come up with my motor names? Oh my gosh. You know, someone's actually asked that before. So if you look at them closely, one person ever has figured out where most of the motor names come from. So there's a few that have no connection to anything, but the two connections with most cases are a bunch of them are named after either magic cards or magic sets. And then some of them are named after Transformers, because I'd actually be dead if it wasn't for my Transformers. Some people have heard this story before. When I was a kid, I was down in Southern California, and we parked to go to the bank before we went to Disneyland that day. And the bank was doing some show or something about like it was like an employee, I don't know what the heck it was, something weird. And so we parked in the next parking lot over, and it was on the back side of the Kmart, which some of you guys don't know what Kmart is, because they're not in business anymore. And they had their auto repair thing on the back there, and it was like on a slope. And my parents had like this little Escort station wagon in the 80s. And I asked my mom if I could go in the bank with her, and my dad was sitting in the passenger seat. My brother was sitting on his lap, 80s, before seatbelt laws. And my dad was asleep against the pillar. And I went to get out, and I was like, oh crap, I need to grab my Laserbeak. Laserbeak's a little cassette that turns into the little bird. And so I reached back, grabbed my Laserbeak, and went to go out the door at that point, and some guy who had parked his truck up on the top of the hill had left it in gear but had not put the e-brake on. Right. And it popped out of gear and it rolled down and it smacked the side of the door. I flew across, hit my head on the other window and shattered it. And if I wouldn't have grabbed my Laserbeak and gotten out of the car, I would have just got squished. So crazy. And I still have the Laserbeak to this day. So if it wasn't for my Laserbeak, I'd be squished. There would be no Team Brood. So I named some of my products after Transformers. Hence, like the new 550 coming out is called the Devastator, which is the big robot that combines from all the construction guys. Yeah. Yes, Blue Light Special. That guy remembers. I told that to my kids the other day, and they had no clue what I was talking about. It's clearly not a cut down anymore. So it used to be a cut down. So, but that's where most of the names come. They come from Transformers or magic cards or magic sets with some few random ones thrown in there. So there's a few just couldn't find a Transformer name or something.
Right.
Yeah. So
awesome. So, dude, I kind of wondered that too, and I don't know why it never clicked to ask that question. I'm super glad that whoever asked it because that totally should have been on my list. I've always admired the names; they're great. So that kind of sums up all of my questions and all of that. And so right now, really, my main thing is thanks for being on. I appreciate you for taking the time out and talking to me. Talking and sharing stories and all of that and making you more approachable to the community is what I'm about. And I think that it does that, man. I think it makes you a person instead of just a business. And that's really what this whole thing is about, not just for businesses, but for everybody, that really all these guys out there want to just help everybody out because somewhere along the lines, we all received help as well. Yes. And so is there anything I missed, any shout outs you want to do, any of that stuff before I sign you off and thank you and then kind of head out the rest of the show?
I don't know if there was any questions that specific people. It appears that people really want to see this square motor. Hold on, I'll grab it.
I kind of want to see the square motor too. I'm not gonna lie. I have an affinity for square things that are supposed to be round.
Well, it's not fully square. It's just partial. My high performance drill line for dentists. I hate going to the dentist, even though my dentist is a husky and he's awesome. And I've had the same dentist for 20 years. Except for my root canal dentist. That was this smoking hot Canadian chick. So I don't know why she's a dentist. Should be a model. I thought when she walked in, I was like, because I was like all on the numbing stuff and had no clue. But yeah, I hate going to the dentist. So this is an old Trinity 19 turn motor. The stocks are basically the same thing. They have a flat here and a flat here, and they were designed like that so you couldn't rotate the end bell and cheat and add timing because they were locked at 24 degrees timing. So the problem is though, is if I want to turn it into a crawler motor, I can't. If the can was round, because some of the stock motors were round, you could just cut the tab off and rotate it. So, the flat right here and then the flat right there, you can kind of see it. What we did is I let Nick do it because I'm not that good at CAD to the point where I'm comfortable enough to send it off to be produced. Nick basically drew it because, these parts right here, the brush hoods and whatnot, they sat at basically angle because the whole end bell was at an angle. So Nick straightened everything and got it at 0 degrees of timing. So there's literally millions of these style of motors out there, literally millions of them. Trinity was the king of stock motors. You either ran Trinity motors or you went slow in the racing days. And every stock motor they came out with was always the hot thing to have and the fast thing to have. And so there's so many of these out there. It's nuts. And they basically are just worthless at this point to most people. And what we're doing with this end bell is it'll be a kit and you'll be able to just buy this, transport, the parts off of it if you want, put a crawler style armature, which you can get from us as well. Yeah. and you can literally, you know, get yourself into a crawler motor, hand wound and everything, probably for like less than $50. And, you know, and you can just keep pounding them out. As you beat the can up, just go buy another one and just go buy another one. And like I said, they're out there. I mean, I see them in lots on eBay all day. I mean, there was one on eBay a couple weeks ago. Someone posted, I mean, had 40 motors in it, sold for $50. You know, because no one wants them, you know, so.
Right. So I see a comment that says I need one. I literally have one. Like, I might have 2 of them. I know for sure I have one. Did they come in like gold too?
Oh yeah,
green.
So no. So this is the 19 churn. This was what we called the Komodo Dragon 19 churn.
I know I have that one.
19 churn that Trinity made. They made three versions of the 19 churn. They made the Chameleon 2, which was called the C2, and then this was the Komodo. And then the stock motors have been like this for a while. They've been I think the first one was the Paradox, which they called it that because it was the first stock motor that you could take the end bell off and they were rebuildable. Back then they had tabs that sealed them so you couldn't get inside them. So the Paradox, that one doesn't technically work because the can is slightly different. But then they came out with the P2K, I think the Midnight 2, the Green Machine 3, the P2K2, the Revenge of the Monster, the Cobalt stock. I mean, there's like 15 of them. And like they used to come out with a new one of these every year, starting in the late 90s all the way until that Paragon didn't actually make their motors, just so you know that. They make great tire sauce though. These things are everywhere. And the gold one, if you have a gold color one, if it's like a really bright, like looking copper, that's
it's like that.
That's a P2K2, I believe, or a P2K. It's one of those two.
Where
if
they
it's a
came
light
from.
gold, then it might be the one.
Yeah.
So, but there's so many of these out there, and that's part of what this is for. Is that, you know, people can get into them. I still have a ton of these myself. I mean, I have like 1,000 of this motor, and they like all I do now at this point is I rob parts off of them because it's like, what am I going to do with them? Well, now I can actually make, and this will be one of the new motors that we're coming out with. You know, we're going to part them out, and we're going to put the new end bell on them. We're going to put a new crawler style armature in them. Don't know the name yet, but we'll come up with something out of that. Paragon was the best crawler, or it was the best tire sauce known to man. Yes, it gave you headaches and it smelled like oil of wintergreen, but man, it was instant traction. So people whine too much about it and they banned it from everywhere because it smelled funny. So, but it was the bee's knees. So yeah. You can't do much tire sauce with your crawler guys though, because you always cut your tires up and put all that glue on them, and that stuff doesn't move that. So
I tried the tire sauce thing one time. It worked actually too good, which sounds ridiculous, I know, but when you crawl, you want to be able to like shift a little bit and like slide the front end of your car around. Like my sidewall got stuck, and like I couldn't move my tire off of the side of the rock. It was nuts. That was the last time I ever tried that. I was like, I have plenty of grip. I don't need any of that stuff. So so turpentine works if you want to soften your tires up though. Yeah. So that's what we used to use back in the day. But if you leave it in there too long, your tire literally will get this big. It'll be like humongous. So because it like absorbs it. So Simple Green works too. Yeah, it's more of a cleaning thing though. Yeah. I use Simple Green all the time. I'm talking like we legit a local guy. His kids run go-karts and he raced for years and he made up this tire sauce. And I mean, I'm telling you, it works, but it really was more of a hindrance. Like it gripped well, but I didn't have any problems with with grip. And then when I put that on there, man, I like, you know how you wiggle your steering with the crawler and like get it to drop places and all that stuff. There was none of that. Like it was just planted. So yeah,
I made a couple of sets of tires like that with old racing tires that I had, and they were way too soft of a compound and had way too much grip. Yeah. So we tried to make them harder, but that didn't work because they're glued. Whatever.
All right, man. Well, if you don't have anything else, I'm gonna let you go.
I don't, unless someone has questions or whatever. I mean, got to go to Deadpool here shortly.
That's what I'm saying. So I'll let you go and let you catch Deadpool, and I'll talk about the people who are coming on here in the near future. And but thank you for being on. You're a huge wealth of knowledge, and I totally appreciate it, man. I had a great conversation, so I hope everybody else enjoyed it as much as I did.
Cool. So just send me whoever won, and then have them message me direct. What am I wearing? I'm wearing a TNC shirt. This was cool in the 80s, but you have to go to Hawaii now to buy it. So
yeah. So yeah, that's what I'll do. I will send you who won, and then I'll have them get in touch with you. And I just thank all you guys. I'm gonna close you out now. Thanks for being on, man. And then I'll end the show.
No problem.
And we'll go from there. All right.
Okay. Sounds good.
See you later.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. All right, guys. The 27 of you are still on. This is the longest ever episode we've had, and I appreciate it. Man, I think honestly, if Eddie's down, we probably should have him back again with all the knowledge and all the stuff that's going on. I genuinely appreciate the conversation, and just there's so much there that really there's just not enough time. So let's talk a little bit about what's coming up. On May 24th, I have Mr. Comma D, Dion Rosser. He great guy, man. Just humble, killer builds. And doing some crazy cool self-taught 3D printing stuff, man. It's amazing. The week after that, I have Mr. Holmes from Holmes Hobbies coming on. I didn't mean to stack them so close together, but hey, things happen, and that's how it goes. And they're both great names in this industry, and I want to support the people out there who are supporting all of us. And so then after that, I have a gap. And so I want to talk a little bit briefly about the gap, and then I'm going to make a video separate for that. So I've had this idea kicking around in my head for a while, and my idea is to have people submit who aren't well known. Submit your builds, submit your story to me, and I'll select 4 or 5 of you and have on people who no one knows about. Not because maybe you're new, maybe you have a killer build that just nobody's really seen, maybe social media is not really your thing, whatever it is, but people who are new. And that's what I want to do with that gap. So on June 7th, I want to fill that time slot with some new people. So I'm going to do a video here posting up about that and what's going on. And then the last one on June 14th, I have already filled that position, and we'll go from there. I can't announce who it is yet. I don't have all of it locked down 100% for sure, but we'll go from there. So, guys, thank you for tuning in. I genuinely appreciate it. We'll get the winter stuff taken care of and stuff sent to that person and to Eddie. I'll go back through the comments, but it's already midnight here, and I have to work in the morning, so it might not be till tomorrow. Again, if it wasn't for all of you tuning in, it wasn't for you watching, then it would just be me talking to a camera, and that's incredibly boring. So thank you guys all for tuning in, and I will catch you next week on Live at 9:45.